And if that's your maximum stress level and that's your minimum stress level, it doesn't take much for you to lose yourself. This identity I had and this image I'd created and based my life on, getting old together and seeing the children grow up and all those things, actually was not gonna come true. And that was devastating. And she was clearly referring to my mental state and whether I was, contemplating taking my own life. And I think this is what the challenge most men in midlife have. They know they don't want to repeat the last 10 years, but they don't know what they actually do want, and therefore they stay.
Experiencing.
Well, my wife turned around and said, because I came in and I cracked a joke and I was just playing with the dog who was happy to see me and that, and she says, I love the fact that you've had the morning that you've had and you still bring that energy and laughter. And I'm like, what can you do?
What else can you do? Yeah, I mean, there is other things you can do, but that's what it's all about, and that's kind of why I wanted to have you here, Nick, is to bring that energy and I guess I've met you once in person briefly.
That's right, yeah.
But just seeing you obviously on social media, and we've met online a few times, and the energy that you're bringing is something I wanted to talk about. So so thanks for being here. It's really, really great given the morning that you've had.
I'm looking forward to it, Sanjay. And to be honest, so I'm actually, by the end of November, I would have officially launched This Guy Is On Fire, and with that, it's a coaching element. So you are the first of 4 podcasts I'm doing this month solo. Normally I do it with my wingman, my lovely lady Andrea, and because we're talking about This Girl Is On Fire. So actually, and I know you mentioned the panel show as well.
Yes.
So I'll speak to the organisers and I'll put your name down. If they require anything else, I know it's a free event, so it's not from that point. But if they require anything else, or for you to message them direct, then I'll find out for you.
Sure.
And I think it'll be a great evening. And I'm just looking forward to being part of that panel and adding some value.
So tell us, let's start with that, because we mentioned it. Why not? I mean, tell us about that. What is that? What is that all about? And how did it come about?
So I've got a dear friend of mine, Nick Eade, who does a huge amount for charities. He runs a PR company, and he essentially is a PR company for charities. And there's some really big charities that are very important to him, the Stroke Association, the Global Gift Gala. I mean, he does some incredible work around the world, works with amazing people, Eva Longoria, Victoria Beckham, big names. But he's just such a humble bloke. And he's going, he's late 40s. He's going through his own challenges in life. And he's aware that the other people around him have these challenges, and it can be anything. So for clarity, he's married. His husband is Andy. So in himself, he has those challenges with 2 men in a relationship. And let alone his awareness to everyone else in midlife, and be that just a sheer unhappiness that men experience in their middle years. And so he wanted to do something about it. And clearly I was someone, I've known him and he knows what I'm doing. He knows we help women in midlife. He knows that I'm moving towards helping men in midlife. He knows my story as well. So it's like, look, please come and speak on this panel. It's a great panel. It'll be amazing to have you there. And so it was a no-brainer for me. And anything I can do to sort of help men think better thoughts and to think differently about their situation, I'm passionate about that, quite honestly.
Fantastic. And that's exactly what I wanted to get into with you. And it's very clear from, like I said, the way that you communicate out there and the work that you're doing and the messages that you're putting out there, that is something that really is kind of, talking about fires, there's a fire inside you that you're passionate about.
Do you know what the thing is what not many people know, and more and more people will get to know, is 10 years ago, my world imploded. And I look at it like a midlife crisis, because whilst it wasn't necessarily the stereotypical midlife crisis, I was in my middle years. I was 39 years and 10 months. So, and my world was in crisis. I went from earning a very healthy six-figure salary to nothing, lost my business. I went through a divorce. I got burnt out. Had a life-changing heart condition. And I had a few other little battles that were going on. I spent a lot of time hiding behind drink, recreational drugs. And I'd become a version of myself that wasn't, where I wanted to be. The thing is, back then, I knew that I wasn't happy. Feeling lonely in a relationship is horrendous. Loneliness in itself is horrendous, but feeling lonely in a relationship is just heart-wrenching. And I just didn't know what to do about it. So in typical male fashion, I just pushed on and carried on until basically I lost everything. And I'm being told at 40 years old, when they finally diagnosed what my heart condition is, I need a pacemaker. My life is going to be very, very different from now on. And, when I walked out of my marriage, so I've been with my first wife for 23 years, nearly 24 years. And I just remember, thinking that I'd always seen it as my forever after. And I was a proud dad, still am, and a very hands-on dad. And just to think that this identity I had and this image I'd created and based my life on, getting old together and seeing the children grow up and all those things, actually was not going to come true. And that was devastating for me. But I knew I got to the point in my relationship, and I know that lots of people in their middle years, through conversations that I've had with people where I'm already coaching them through this, is they start shouting at their children, and they start, they almost start their day here. And if that's your maximum stress level and that's your minimum stress level, it doesn't take much for you to lose yourself and become something you don't want to be. And I just started seeing that a lot more in me. And I just went, no way, this is not who I'm meant to be. And I knew the best thing I had to do was to leave. And as I drove out my drive, I promised myself that I would do whatever it takes, that I would take responsibility for who I was and who I wasn't, and I would become a better man. And I would look into how that was going to happen. And essentially I went into therapy and coaching, got a coach and a therapist for 2.5 years. And I've got to be honest, it was the best investment I ever made, because it just helped me through it. I think the biggest thing, Sanjay, and I don't know if I'm going off on tangent here, but the biggest thing for me was the grief. My identity as an adult. So I'd been with my wife and I'd lived that life since I was 18. And that was my entire identity. My friendship group, my work, everything. Basically, it feels like it was overnight, but obviously it never happens like that. But it all happened at the same time, was gone. And I also chose to remove myself from the town I'd lived in since I was a child. I'd had a brief spell of living somewhere else. But I knew that I needed to be away from it all. I also stopped drinking. I stopped taking recreational drugs because I could feel myself going into depression. And I just knew that for me to get through this, I just needed to have a clear head. I just needed to have enough awareness around me that I could actually get through this. And I remember speaking to my therapist at the time, who was genuinely worried about me. Because I also had a couple of financial challenges, not just from earning loads of money to not earning any, but also there were a couple of legal cases going on where how I lost my business was my business partner screwed me over. And I ended up having to walk away from a very successful business. And whilst I had every cause and lots of evidence to actually kick him out, I was so busy fighting life and everything else that had happened. I just didn't have the strength to actually take on such another big fight. And my therapist was like, genuinely, how are you? How are you coping? Because I get people coming here with one of those things. You've got all these things going on, and I'm genuinely worried about you. And she was clearly referring to my mental state and whether I was, contemplating taking my own life. And I think the reality is when life gets so bad, those thoughts do come into your head. But I very quickly put them out my head because it's not an option for me. It was never an option for me. I've got two beautiful girls. I now have a beautiful stepdaughter as well and stepson. And I just knew that that wasn't my life. That wasn't it. There is so much more. And I just said to her, I said, the reason I'm okay is because I don't like the alternative. So I will do whatever it takes to get from where I am to get to where I need to be. And I knew that was an inside job. And that's why now, 10 years on, I'm like this guy with this energy, this warmth, this kindness, this empathetic, because I've been there. I've been through it. My past life, I wasn't always that way. But that is what life is about, isn't it? Making those mistakes, learning from them, growing from them, and just trying to be a better person every day. And that's what I do every day. I just try and be better than I was yesterday. It's my life. It's my competition with me. And hopefully that benefits everyone that I come into contact with.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that story. And that shivers sent down my spine just listening to that because, first of all, having sort of the empathy and the compassion, but also some similarities in my story as well. So, thanks for that. And, there's a lot of things you said there. I want to touch on, you said, which you stuck really in my head, feeling lonely in a relationship. And I felt that way, and I'm sure there are other people out there who are feeling that way right now. But how does that happen? I mean, because it sounds like a paradox. How can you feel lonely in a relationship? What does that actually mean?
Do you know what? It is an awful feeling, and when you were asking me that question, I got a shiver, because funny enough, where I am now in my life, I am so not lonely. I am so loved. I have so much of that around me. It's weird to try and sort of go back into the memories and to sort of conjure it up because it was such a raw feeling. But I think for me, it got to a point where I just felt that my entire situation, and I was having conversations with my then wife, we need to sort this out. If we don't, we're going to split up. Why would we split up? Because then you'll have to start again and I'll have to start again. Why can't we sort all these things out? But what I now know is my wife was going through her own challenges, her own depression herself. And also, I'd been a bit of a dick. So it got to a point, there was a lot of immaturity in that relationship.
Mm.
And what I now know on reflection is our ability to communicate where actually we understood what was being said, not what we thought it meant, was really bad. Quite honestly, I mean, I remember we got a marriage guidance counsellor in, and she said, "Let me understand where you are with communication skills." So they put us back to back, and they gave us identical pieces of Lego. There were 9 pieces, okay, and I had to communicate to my then wife what piece I'd picked up and where I'd put it, so she could then build a replica of what it was. Now, she, on the first piece, got it wrong. And then, therefore, every other piece that went on was wrong. And it's a really interesting exercise to do, because I think what I'm saying is very clear and obvious. And clearly it wasn't. And that goes, that was just Lego. What about the rest of your marriage? When you talk about work, when you talk about money, when you talk about sex, when you talk about the children, how many things were lost in communication? And it just got to the point that it was awful. It was really, really awful. And going back to the original question, laying in bed with someone next to you and actually feeling that alone is probably one of the worst feelings I've ever had. And it was soul destroying. And I think at the time, the biggest issue was we always have choices, Sanjay, right? They may not be the best choices, but we always have choices. I didn't like my choices. And it just made it really, really difficult.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing, and yeah, I didn't want to stir up those memories, which you've clearly done really well to lock them away. So thank you for sharing.
But you know what, Sanjay? They're not locked. I have dealt with everything. And fun enough, I heard this on a podcast recently. Is depression is when you try and depress all these feelings, these emotional states that's gone on in your life. And thankfully, through the therapy and 2.5 years of it, I've been able to take responsibility for my muck-ups, and there were a few. Take responsibility for what I wasn't as a man, who I wasn't, make amends to that, and just deal with everything. I've apologized to my ex-wife on several occasions. And it's not, okay, I've said sorry, I want you to say sorry. That's her thing, right? And I think that's what we must realize as people is we often hear you must take responsibility for your own things. And it's so important, because if you want to heal, if you don't want to have to depress all these emotions and feelings from trauma from your past, which has been proven, by the way, holding all this trauma in is stress-inducing, therefore disease-inducing, right? You have to deal with them. And sometimes it's ugly. You got to go, yeah, it was me. I wasn't great. Actually, I could have done better. And here's the thing, in a relationship, is 2 of you. And yes, at some point, the other person has to take responsibility, but it's not up to you to make them take responsibility. You have to take responsibility for your own stuff and leave them to work out their stuff. And that's it. And therefore, and that's why my marriage would never have continued, because I did take responsibility. She wasn't ready to take responsibility. And there goes where we are in relationships. You always want your partner to be happy, healthy. You want a great relationship with them, but that's not down to you. That's down to them. And the same thing with responsibility. It's down to them. So all you can do is own your own stuff. And then that helps everyone.
Yeah, but that's really hard to do, isn't it? And to come to that realization, and you mentioned it with the Lego, and that stuck out at me. And you said you thought you were communicating things really clearly, but you didn't say, but she didn't understand. You said, but clearly I wasn't.
Oh,
right? So to have that level of awareness, Nick, I think, it's taken me, I'm 43, when you have to think about your age, you're getting on. I'm 43. And I think I've only come to that realization in the last few years, that I've got to own my shit.
yeah.
Why is that so hard for people? What is it? Where's that block?
I think the thing is, right, is as men, right, all we are is older versions of that little boy we used to be. Okay, whatever little rascal you were or whatever, you're just a few years older, bit more facial hair, and ultimately that little boy is a huge part of you still. And I think the thing is, when life is going well, when you've not had any challenges, you've not had any reason to look at yourself, to ask yourself, actually, could I have done better? Was I a bit of a dick there? Right? Actually, you think everyone else is a dick and you're awesome. So therefore, to start looking at yourself, to take responsibility for your actions, for most people, it doesn't come easy. And what is great is I'm having more and more conversations with younger men who have a lot more awareness about themselves. And also, I have this saying, I'm so self-aware, I'm so self-aware. I think self-aware is one layer where, so for example, I'm very self-aware in this podcast that what I'm going to say is going to be into the domain, so the public domain, so I'm going to be mindful. So that's my self-awareness. But I'm more aware of oneself, as in what I do say and the impact and the ripple it will have on other people. And I think for me, that's a true essence of self-awareness, where you are genuinely aware of oneself and every action, everything you say, the ripple effect it has on the people around you. And I think the more and more we can take responsibility for everything that we do, perfect example. In 2007, I just wanted my then wife to be happy. She never seemed happy. We would do amazing stuff, go on amazing holidays. We had a charmed life. Just wanted her to be happy. And she wasn't. And I remember seeing a therapist at the time. And the best thing she said to me is, it's great that you want your wife to be happy, but it's not your responsibility. You can do things, right, because you want her to be happy, but how she receives that, right, is down to her. And that is the same on every part of life. So if you are going through an issue with your partner or with anyone in life and you go, I just want them to take responsibility, you are kidding yourself. that they're going to do that. It's down to you to just take responsibility for your bit, right? And then let them work it out. And here's the thing, you soon then find out if that person's a great person to have in your life or not. Because if you are constantly taking responsibility and owning your shit, and they're not, that in itself will help you understand what a toxic person is and whether they should be part of your life or not.
Yeah, I mean, when you say it like that, it sounds really, really straightforward, but it's true, right? Everything you said there certainly makes sense. And one of the hardest bits, you mentioned men being just the older version of that younger rascal, and you're absolutely right. But and I think one of the hardest bits for men, I'm not speaking for all men, I can speak for myself, is that when I recognize, yeah, okay, there was when I first recognized, okay, there's a big part, I've got a big part to play in this. That for me at the time set me on a cascade of beating myself up. It's because of me. I'm this terrible person. I've made this happen. I've fucked this up, right? And that led me on a path to nearly nowhere. And I think that is the missing piece. And I think what I'm seeing now in the current climate with the conversations I see you having, you talk about, International Men's Days coming, all of these things, is to pause there and say, hold on a minute, let's just have a bit of self-compassion. Let's accept your shit, fine. But it's how you respond to that next that's going to make the biggest difference as to where how you get out of this.
So I put a post out of this. Firstly, thank you for saying a swear word there, because I wasn't sure if I could share all that. So now I know where we're at.
Yeah, we're at. The green light's been given, yeah.
But so I put a post out the other day about mindfulness and how part of mindfulness is when you're having a conversation with someone, whether it's heated, whatever, challenging, is just being mindful of what's being said and how you're feeling, okay? But you don't have to label it. And when you talk about taking responsibility and then looking at, oh God, I fucked up, I did that, that's called living. Unless you're maliciously doing stuff, right, that's just called living. And it's when you go and take responsibility for it, you don't even have to label it. You just have to know whether that was a good thing and you want to carry on doing things like that again or not. And then if it's an or not, what can you do about it? I think we just get so caught up in having to have an emotional response. And I know that may sound quite mechanical. I say, well, of course I've got an emotional response. I've just done this. I've pissed my wife off and, and all of a sudden I need to feel this. But that's not actually helpful for anyone. And I think this is where, if in men we can get to that point where we just grow that awareness, you don't have to label it good or bad. You just have to say, actually, I did fuck up. I can see that that's wrong for many reasons or whatever. And actually, that's something I most definitely don't want to do again. I don't want to make them feel this way. I don't want to behave. I don't want to be known as that guy. And I think from that point, actually, it can be a lot easier to then start looking for ways to take responsibility, because then you're not then labeling yourself with all the things that you were. And funny enough, I listened to your story on your podcast, so I know some of the things that you're referring to. But here's the thing, though, Sanjay, at the time, you only know what you know. So you have to deal with it in that way. And it's through going through that, through chastising yourself, through growing yourself now and, being the human that you are, is that you can look back on that on hindsight and go, actually, gosh, I was really harsh on myself, and also I'm sure you can probably drum up the emotion you were feeling at the time. But what's great is you don't do that anymore. or you certainly won't do it as much. So therefore, life has given you a wonderful lesson that we can just get to share with everyone else.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I mean, it is, isn't it? It's you said it there. It's you know that you don't want to, and you mentioned this earlier. You knew that that wasn't the guy that you were meant to be. It then starts begging the question. This is kind of how what happened to me is that, well, who is the guy that I want to be, right? And then focusing on that rather than the labels that I've given myself. I think that's a really beautiful way of channeling that. And certainly for me, that's exactly what I did. And you kind of mentioned it was identity for me. It was an identity shift. And you said to when you lost everything, it was like, who am I? I've lost everything. I thought that's what I was. And then you're in this limbo period, in this kind of purgatory where you're just trying to figure this stuff out. But then once you kind of you're never going to hone and say, right, that's exactly the person I'm going to be. But once you kind of know the trajectory of which direction you need to go, for me, that just was like, right, okay, well, this is what I need to do. This is, if I don't want to be that person, I 100% don't, and I don't want that to happen again, then exactly you said, I'm going to use that lesson that life has given me, and I'm going to throw everything I've got into going this way and just see where that takes me. And
I think the thing
I'm
is,
still on that journey.
Absolutely. And I think, when it's like when people come out relationships, isn't it? And next minute they're with someone else, the rebound. But that's what we can do in life. We can come out of one career and go straight into another career, and that there isn't any harm in that, right? Because life is also about finding out what you don't want to do. And as you move away from an experience or a version of you that you don't like you said, you're not immediately going to know, aha, that's what I do want. And I think this is what the challenge most men in midlife have. They know they don't want to repeat the last 10 years, but they don't know what they actually do want. And therefore they stay. And another year goes, another year goes. And what they seem to forget is it isn't just money that compounds. It's all their behaviors, their attitudes, their daily life. And for lots of them in midlife, I mean, I'm sure you're aware of this stat, the biggest killer of men in the 40s is themselves, where they take their own life, which is just awful because they are almost like paper cutting themselves every day with knowing that they're unhappy, but they've got to a point now where they've got so much financial and family responsibility, plus also ego has got them on, certainly in my case. So my ego, to the outside world, I was really successful. People would go, God, I love your life. God, that would be amazing. But I built this character of myself, this persona that I thought I had to be. And actually, I was a bit of a dick. And I remember things like I'd get a really nice new car. People go, that's a nice new car. And I go, yeah, wait till the next one. And I was like, yeah, next. And it's not surprising I bloody burnt out. I never enjoyed any of it. It's like, enjoy the process of time. That's ultimately what life is about. But if we keep going, yeah, next year I'm going to do that, and next year I'm going to do that, and we all know when we get to goals, I think scientifically, the maximum amount of enjoyment you get is about 2 months, and they're like major goals, and it might be your dream house or your dream holiday or something, and then you just go back to the process. So if you just focus on the goals, you actually have very few moments of enjoyment in life. And that's where I got to. And I just think it's very easy for men especially to just get caught up and then more importantly, get trapped in that. And that's when it's dangerous.
You're so right. I mean, this applies to both sexes. I mean, you mentioned that you build yourself up to be this character who you think a man or I should be, right? And what you're really saying is that deep down, that's not who you really are. So that somewhere along the line, we've been skewed, because if you go back, you mentioned that we're just the older version of that child. Well, if you go back to the 5-year-old Nick and ask 5-year-old Nick, what do you want to be when you grow up? Right? There's going to be some imagination there, but there's going to be a very different answer to when you ask a 15-year-old Nick. And in those 10 years, I believe, this is just, I don't have any data on this, but I believe that there is this social conditioning that we all go through about what a man should be like. Now, it depends on your environment, what you're exposed to, whether you're into sports, whether you're into, whatever it is, you see this as, okay, this is what a man should do. And you go chasing that, right? And same happens for females. They get, I ask my 5-year-old now, she's 5. I get some really cute, lovely answers, and I dread to ask her when she's 15, but it's going to be very different. You've probably gone through this, and you can kind of guide me. But so do you think that's part of it? That kind of social conditioning that happens in those formative years?
100%. So part of my coaching course is I have this part where it's called "Don't Be That Dad." Okay. Now, as a dad with daughters, okay, you know how you behave, you know how you are around the house, you know how you speak to your wife, right? You know how you manage stress, alcohol, okay? You know what you get up to when no one's looking, okay? You know yourself better than anyone. Now, what we think is that the children only see what we want them to see. They only hear what we want them to hear. But we all know, we can all pick up on vibes, on energy. Everyone is aware of that environment. If it's a stressy environment, no matter how much makeup you put on that environment, it is picked up. And here's the thing. As a daughter, you are the first man that she will love. And with that, she will look at you as to how you love, how you behave, how you talk, how you show love in a marriage, how you handle arguments, all these things that I said. And that will set the standard for what she will feel consciously and unconsciously. And then she will go and look for that in a partner. So the question you have to ask yourself as a dad is, would you want your daughter bringing a version of you home as a partner? And if not, what needs to change? And by the way, that goes to dads with boys as well. Because
absolutely.
if they see, again, for full transparency, when in the last year and a half, nearly 2 years of my relationship, in my first marriage, it got physical. And one night we would go to a Little Mix concert, and there was lots of fun, lots of love. We used to do lots of things. The next night, my 2 girls are pulling me and their mother apart from grabbing each other and arguing. Now, the impression I'm creating there is, wow, so there's love over here and there's fun stuff, but the cost of that is this behavior. Okay? Now, can you imagine if I carried on like that and that my daughter thought, actually, it's all right for a man to be physical with me because he bought me this nice thing. He did this nice thing. And yes, those years are so informative, let alone the external stuff that we're marketed to, the environment that we're in, the school we go to, the area we live in, the culture we're brought up in. Every part of that has an impact on who we are today. In fact, again, listen to a podcast today, and it's that the French psychiatrist, I can't remember his name actually, but he talked about it is those years that define who you are as an adult, period. And it is those years, if they're a stressy environment, that will also have an impact on where you are from a health perspective. So it's not just what you think and feel, it's actually whether you're going to be ill or not. I mean, that's how important it is. And I think the biggest issue with men is, and again, I've done it, I've criticized my wife, my ex-wife, in front of the children. I've said stuff that I shouldn't have said. And that's just not right. Because again, we're setting the standard for our children. We already know that they mirror us. You know, they start doing some of your mannerisms and things like that when they're young and all that. But everything else, you know, the brain hooks that you start developing when you're young, we are helping develop those brain hooks. So that's why part of my course is don't be that dad. Because the impact that we have on our children is so huge, good and bad. And here's the thing, by the way, even if you are a bad dad and the daughter goes, actually, I never want a man like them, she is still impacted by the relationship and therefore makes a decision on that standard you set, but goes the other way. And that's not always healthy either.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they do as you do, not as you say, right? And there's a reason for that saying. And I think recognizing those formative years and the influence it has, and an exercise that's really, really helped me is looking back and just journaling about, you know, what were the things that were happening in my life at that time, and then really just from that picking what brought me joy, right? Because there's a lot of things that didn't bring me joy, and the things that I didn't agree with, or things that I wasn't happy about. But what were the things that did bring me joy? And I think when I turned 40, I did this, and that set me off on I was like, why am I not doing these things anymore, right? Or anything that's closely related, because we're talking about who you really are.
Because you're not allowed to draw a wall, Sanjay. You weren't allowed then, and you're not allowed now.
Right. Why not? Right. This is it. Exactly that. So for me, it was, I'm into gadgets, but for me, it was cameras, right? I remember my dad used to put a camera in my hand whenever we used to go to like weddings or parties or, you know, wherever we were. He'd always, and at the beginning, at first I was, oh, Dad, but then I started to grow to love it. And I used to remember, I used to love doing it. It used to bring me so much joy because I would go to these events and I was a very withdrawn and introverted child anyway. So this was my way of disappearing, right? Almost kind of, I had this project to do and I'd escape and I'd be taking these films and taking photos and I wasn't doing it anymore. And here I am now talking to you where I'm doing videography, I'm charging for it. This has all happened in the last 3 years since I had that revelation of let me go back and find out who I really am and do those things still spark something in me today. And a few of those things did. And I think that's been so valuable. I
think that's amazing. You know, finding things that make you happy.
Yeah.
We tend to forget that. I mean, and Andrea, she put it in. So Andrea, my wife, she put that in one of her books, and it's like, what are 5 things that make you happy? Write them down, and then try and do one of them a day. And it was just fascinating, the ones that we put down. It was spending time with my wife, spending time with my children, going for a walk with the dog. You know, it's not going to the Maldives. By the way, that would make me happy. But it's generally, what are the 5 things that make you happy? And we just forget. We just forget to ask ourselves. We're so busy just trying to just get through. And then it's like, so I have this saying, it's like, do less, be more. Because actually what we do as individuals, we go, so you're going to tell me I need to do breath work. Okay, so that's another thing I need to add on to my morning routine. Cold shower, I wasn't doing that. I'll add another thing on. And we keep putting all these things on top of ourselves, right? Imagine like putting loads of books on top of your head. I mean, you're just going to have this huge pile that clearly is going to come falling down. So actually, how can you do less to be more? And whatever that be more might be more present, be more active, right? Be more healthy, be more mindful, whatever it is. But look at what you can do less of first. So therefore, then you can do more of what you want.
Yeah. That's it, isn't it? It's being able to look at and say, what can I do less of, or what do I want to do less of, and that often is the biggest step for people. And then, yeah, as I said, focusing on those other things. And I think, if someone else looked back on their child and you said drawing on walls, or playing with trains, or whatever it would be, right? And you think, well, I can't do that right now. Even though it would probably bring them some joy, right? Even though, as an adult, I'm sure doing some of those things, the World Cup's coming up, and the football sticker adverts are coming out again, and I'm just getting this real rush of nostalgia, of what I used to do. I'm thinking, do you know what? Yeah, I'm going to get one. I'm going to get one for the World Cup. I'm going to get a football sticker album, and I'm going to do. I don't know who I'm going to swaps and got with, but I'll find someone. I'm sure there's an online community of 40-year-old somethings who are doing this right now. I'm going to have to. There you go. There's a train of thought.
Yeah, but again, they say as adults we lose the ability to play, don't we? Because all of a sudden everything's so bloody serious, right? It's so important that we still connect with that little boy that's in us and still have them. I mean, my little boy in me is I say terrible jokes, like worse than dad jokes. They're just such little boy humor. And also I just do just silly little things around the house, and the children and Andrea puts up with it. They give me a little smile and a like that. But you know what? It just brings me so much joy just to be able to have that sort of space to be that guy.
Yes.
And I think it's important. If yours is buying a sticker album, and I remember those going to school with my pile, badges are worth 2, and things like that. And I just it's a very fond memory. So anything that sort of digs deep and gets that fond memory out, I think it's got to be a good thing.
Yeah, and I think the trouble with a lot of these things in adulthood, as you said, is we've got so many other things to deal with. Is that we often there's obviously a time element. Of course, we're all. I mean, hey, ask me who's time poor. I'll put both hands up. Right, we're all time poor. However, we're all trying to turn up to be so many different things in our life. Right, you just look at you just look at yourselves. Right, I'm a podcaster. I'm a health coach. I'm a husband. I'm a dad. I'm a son. I'm trying to be the best friends, and I'm trying to be the best version of this. All of those different job titles. Right, all these hats I'm wearing. Well, how can I be the best version of that person if I'm turning up as the, low, sad, depressed, frustrated, angry version of me every day? And then the ripple effects that we've already spoken about. So just to find that little bit of time to carve out, to bring that little bit of joy. And if that's going to switch my mood, and we all know this, right? You said it earlier about kids and how instinctive they are. We know this, right? I don't know if it's especially girls. My boy's only a few months old. He's not old enough yet. But I remember my daughter, she would know the minute I would get home, right, what kind of day has dad had, right? And there's an interest. And no matter what comes out of my mouth, even though if I try to suppress it, she knows. Right? There's this instinct there. So, but if I'm on the days where I've ticked those boxes, I've done that, had a little bit of fun, or I've gone to the gym for me now, which is one of those things that does that thing, and I've done those things, is a very different response. And sometimes that's in our subconscious that we're unaware of, but becoming aware of that is really powerful.
I think the thing for me, and it's one of my non-negotiable, well, it's probably the non-negotiable for me, is, you talked about all those roles that you have in your life, but ultimately they're your roles, they're not you, right? Correct. And it's making sure that you have time for you. So when you turn up in those roles, right, you're the best version that you can to get the best from that experience. And that's why for me, my morning routine is just, if I don't do my morning routine, I can lose a day. I definitely don't feel at my best. And I think it's finding whatever system works for you. And, you talk about time, and everyone is so time poor. And this goes back to, do less, be more. But also, I'm a big fan of micro habits. And it's about how we can install those micro habits where maybe there is a bit of fun. But instead of going, well, I need an hour for fun, you go, right, I'm going to have 5 minutes over a coffee where I'm going to look at stupid things on TikTok that make me laugh. I'm going to look at dogs like doing funny things, whatever your thing is, and laugh. Same with exercise. People that I've coached, I talk about where they're like spending 3 to 5 hours commuting on a train. They genuinely time restraints, and then they have to put in a 10-day shift, and it just, I get it. It's not like they're going to go, oh no, I spend 30 minutes meditating and 40 minutes extra. They're like, I'm up, I'm out the door, and that. So it's actually finding little micro habits for them that actually work in your life, and where you're not having to take more on. And a couple of my favorite is running on the spot flat out for 90 seconds. I tell you, that gets your heart rate going, and you do feel like you've had a workout. Hold a plank for 2, 3, 4 minutes. Okay. Do squats while you're brushing your teeth. That's my favorite one at the moment. It's so good. You're activating the biggest muscle, and actually, because of the oxygen and the blood flow, it goes to your hippocampus. And it's really good. Hippocampus is your learning and your memory. So if you know you've got a busy day, right, and you need to be on it, focused about what's happening in front of you, so you can take that information seriously. 2, 3 minutes of squats. All right. Your legs won't thank you, but your brain will. But it's finding out little things that you can do that fit in your life without always having to take, like the gym, 20 minutes to get to the gym, 45 minutes in the gym, 20. That's a morning for most people, and I appreciate that when I do that, it's because I create an environment where I can do that, but that's not for everybody.
Yes, yeah, that's important, isn't it? You've created your lifestyle and your environment and your routine to be able to factor that into it, as opposed, you mentioned those people who are on the go. And again, I'm coaching people like that on the diabetes prevention program as well. And they're just like, I don't have time for this. And for them, I've got to squeeze this in now as well. And it's like, it doesn't work, right? It's just because the value, it's a value system, isn't it? Right at that moment in time, the value of adding that into their life, it's not clear because there's so much else going on. Whereas you and I, you've built that value of exercise over time. That's obviously has taken some time, so you value it. So it kind of has that place in your, in your schedule. I love the idea of the number of, I think it's the number of hours that you have, number of hours you have in your life. So I can't remember the number. If you live to 100, right, and then you have a token like a poker chip, for each hour. It's like, what are you going to spend your poker chips on? Right. Yeah. And when you start to think of it like that, and you've only got a finite pile of poker chips, by the way, right? We know that poker chip pile is going to run out soon. And then you start thinking, and then you align it to your values. But it's hard. Yeah. But those little tiny things. When COVID happened for me, suddenly working from home in front of a computer, doing calls, I obviously stopped going to the gym, stopped working out for a bit, as not everyone, but I know I did. I was, it felt like a holiday, didn't it? At first, people, what's going on? When's this going to end? So your routine completely goes out the window, and I stopped exercising. And then I thought, this is terrible. I can't. And again, started feeling the repercussions of not doing that, as we've spoken about. So how I kickstarted it again, and this, look, I'm a ex-personal trainer, right? So for me, if I'm struggling with this, I know a lot of other people are struggling with this, but for me, it was doing 10 push-ups after every single phone call. Now, in a day, I would do 8, 9 phone calls. But if I went to the gym, would I do 100 push-ups in every time? No, I wouldn't. Yeah. I know people would, but I personally wouldn't, because I'll be doing other things. Yeah. So I was clocking up, 90, 100, 120 push-ups in a day. And yeah, my chest and shoulders didn't thank me in those first few days. But after a while, it just was it took me 15 seconds, if that, to knock out, 10 push-ups. And then, so that was a big win. Then just starting to do little things like that was what ended up me putting that back into my schedule and saying, right, this is now going to have that place. And, I had to rework and rebuild that.
About that, what you did is use the trigger of something that you already do and then attach a micro habit to it. And that's the best way of seeing a micro habit in, because i.e. just every time you set your alarm every an hour, do 10 push-ups. You'll turn your alarm off and go, no, I don't think so. Right? But every time you go and make a coffee, while you're waiting for the coffee to brew, do 10 squats. Every time you go and brush your teeth, do that. Every time you get a phone call, do that. When you attach it to something, it's because here's the thing, right? One of the biggest reasons that when we introduce new habits into our life, that we never manage to keep them, or very rarely do, is because we genuinely forget. Right? We are so autopilot. Our brain's job is to just automate as much as we possibly can so it can concentrate on what else it needs to do. So you can have the best intention in the world, but most people will forget. So the easiest one is tell everyone who's listening to this, brush your teeth for a week with the opposite hand. And by about day 3, 4, you realize that you've been brushing with your, oh my God, I completely forgot. Because actually, that is what you are programmed to do. You've been doing it for years. So to do something to remind you to do something different is where you need a trigger. Yeah, and that's where it's important. And I'm going to add, you left me a message earlier. And one of the first thing you said to me is, you're going to live to 100, and I've been looking at your Instagram feed and referring to my fitness posts. But the reason why fitness is so important to me as well is genuinely, I do want to live to over 100 plus, a healthy 100 plus. Because you touched on this, we know so much stuff of what we should do. Okay, but we don't do it. So the knowing's not enough. You have to have that compelling reason. And you can go, well, I want to be healthy. That's not compelling enough, because you say that and your actions are completely opposite to that. So the reason why fitness, and therefore what I choose to eat, what I choose to drink, everything, it's not just one thing, it's everything else that comes from that, comes down to my number one compelling reason is that I do want to live to over 100 plus, healthy, so I can see my children grow up and I can see their children grow up. And people will go, yeah, well, I want to do that. And you may say that, but your actions do not say that. And that's just the difference. If you say you're going to do something, you got to act like you're going to do it. Otherwise, you're just talking shit. And that's the thing, so find something that's compelling, genuinely compelling, right? And it makes it so much easier to do those little things.
Yeah, it reminds me as a PT, the amount of times that I'm going to get a six pack. I want to get a six pack, Sanjay. And then exactly as you said, this is what you need to do. These are the behaviors that, are you acting? And then it's like, no, the commitment that it takes. And it's the same with this. We're absolutely right. And for me, my one is I want to be the fit granddad. Right, I want to when I've only got a 5-year-old, so hopefully one day she decides she wants to give me grandkids. Fantastic. I want to be a fit granddad. I want to be the granddad who's throwing a ball, playing tennis, going swimming, going cycling, and partly because I didn't have that father figure in my life who was the version I wanted to be. And this is not a blame game. I understand everyone has their circumstances and I have a lot of compassion now, but that's what I craved. And I think I want to, whether the grandchild craves it or not, I just want to prove to myself that I can get to that stage and be healthy, because all the other granddads I know aren't. So, and I'm thinking, why not? Right? Where are all the fit granddads?
Most of the 40-year-olds aren't. Right.
Right.
Honestly,
true.
It's so important. So I'm 50, okay, and that obviously I set myself a challenge when I was 50 to do the human flag in 120 days.
Next question. So let's talk about it.
Okay. Well, I set myself a challenge to do a human flag in 120 days. Now, a human flag, so you hold yourself out on a pole and you're horizontal. And the first thing I was told is you're the wrong height and you're too heavy. And I was like, okay. I said, but I'm determined. And it was this thing that I had that I wanted to do, because I know I'm lazy with my exercise. Actually, I don't have to do a huge amount to stay in shape. So that people go, oh, well, that's brilliant. You go, it is brilliant, but it does make you lazy.
Mhm.
So I needed to challenge myself so that actually I would actually train. And by putting it out there on social media and creating a challenge, I therefore had to be accountable to everyone that was checking in, going, how are you getting on? How are you getting on? Because to be honest, I spoke about it for nearly 2 years and didn't do anything. And even Andrew was like, well, it doesn't matter if you don't do it. You're still fit, so it doesn't matter. And I was like, no, I'm not having that. And there are things in life that I've talked about that I haven't done, like everybody. And this wasn't going to be one of those things. So I set that challenge, I put it out there, and I did it. And the ripple effects of that, okay, is my body shape changed. Now, looking good has always been important to me. And I have struggled with body dysmorphia before. I've looked good and thought I didn't look good. And it seems weird when it comes from a position of arguably when I'm someone's after photo, not before, and I'm still not happy and I'm still picking holes. But that was my own issue that I was going through, and still now and then find myself dipping in. And obviously, there's a reason why that comes from, and I've worked on that. But the flip side, the positive side, is I want to do that because, like you, I want to be in the top 1%, probably, of 50-year-olds for fitness, health, and aesthetics. I want to do the same when I'm 60. I want to do the same when I'm 70, when I'm 80. You know, I remember once going to a Tony Robbins event, and you close your eyes, think about your future. You're 70 years old. What does it look like? How are you feeling? Blah, blah, blah. Now open your eyes. And there was this 70-year-old on stage who was absolutely ripped, right? Looked amazing. And he said, did any of you picture yourself looking like this? And like, you know, there was, I don't know, 13, 14,000 people. And anyone I spoke to was like, no, they didn't. And I think that's the thing. Going back to the environment that we grow up in, we're still growing up in an environment. And we are told that at 70, a friend of mine, Roger Frampton, put out on his social the other day, the elderly sign that we use for our roads, and it's two people like that. And we therefore think that for us to be elderly, I speak to people that are 51, 52, and I tell them, oh, what are you going to do over the next few years? What are your goals? And, oh, gosh, no. I wish I learned to do this when I was younger, and I'm like, hang on, average age is 80. You might live longer. Are you telling me you're spending the next 27 years waiting? There is no reason why in this current society and world that we live in that you cannot be super healthy at 40, 50, 60, 70. But here's the thing. Most people want that, like they want the six pack, but they don't want to do the bit in the middle.
Mm.
And that for me, I want to inspire as many people in their 40s, in their 50s, that actually, you can have the dad bod if you want, if that's what you're into. Health isn't always about having a six pack and looking shredded, all right? But if you want to make the most of your 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, health is the most important thing out of everything you're focusing on. And yet it's the first thing we dispense of when life gets crazy. And it's just, do you know what? It's like you wouldn't set off in the desert without having some water. And that's what you do in life. You just constantly trudging through this desert and you're forgetting to drink some water.
Mm.
And it's mad.
Yeah. It is mad, and I like the way you put that. Is that, you know, we're going on this journey, and we neglect the thing that's going to help us to get there. And I remember, you know, many books and many quotes about people who have spoken to people on their deathbeds, you know, people that are dying, and then you ask them, you know, what are your biggest regrets? And, you know, it's like you said, it's not about the holiday in the Maldives, or that might come up. It's, you know, it's spending more time with my family, you know, being closer to the ones I loved, and, you know, traveling, doing fun things, and it's all that. And so, well, okay, well, in order to do all of those things that we crave when we're about to pass, what do we need? Well, you need your health, right? You can't go traveling if you've got doctor's appointments every other week. And, you know, I mean, I work in diabetes, and, you know, the amount of kind of complications you get as a result of type 2 diabetes, and my father's a diabetic, and it's, you know, it's this surgeon, it's that person, it's that specialist, the foot specialist, an eye specialist. You can't go traveling if that's your life. And, you know, you said, I want to add something to what you said. You said that there's no reason why in today's age you can't be super healthy. Well, there's no reason in today's age, even if you're unhealthy and you're sick with certain conditions. I'm not blanketing, I'm not a doctor, but I can talk about diabetes, things like, you know, lifestyle diseases that we are bringing about. There's no reason why you can not be sick, right? You may not be super healthy, but you can still live longer than you are going to be living right now by changing a few things. So
and you can still live.
And you can still live.
Yeah. You know, and I think that's the thing. It's so sad when I speak to people. So as you know, we've got the female community of This Girl Is on Fire that we coach. And then my side. So the female is a one to many, and This Guy Is on Fire is one to one. You know, men are very different. They're not going to go in a community and say, "Hey, I'm struggling today." We're working on that, but, you know, at the moment. But it's so sad when you look out into the community and there's people of, I think, a young age. You know, when my dad was 50, he didn't look like me. And I would imagine when my children are 50, they won't look like me because, you know, advancements in everything that we do. And it's just such a shame that people have almost given up, because when you get to a plateau, when you get somewhere where life is genuinely hard for how you think and feel and act, that bit in the middle is so freaking difficult to start, to move towards, unless there's a car crash moment in life. You're going to die if you don't. And by the way, we all know you're going to die if you don't anyway, but for some reason we need a particular personal message for that one. There tends to have to be something, or someone around them dies, and they think, oh my God, they were younger than me, or they're only a bit older than me. We tend to wait for that moment, or we actually have a health scare, like I say, ourselves, which is just a shame. You know, I know right now there are people waiting for January to happen to start there. And you just think, you haven't done it up until now. Why are you going to do it in January? If you're serious about doing it, do it now. You know,
it's because, Nick, in January, Nick, I'm going to do it every single day. I'm going to get up and I'm going to not eat sugar. I'm going to go to the gym for 30 days straight. And right now it's not going to happen, but it will happen in January.
I'm going to go from zero to hero. That's what it is. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important, isn't it? And this is where we come to take us back to those micro steps, right? Those micro habits, as you mentioned, right? That all or nothing, that I'm going to do this every day, January, and we know the data behind that. You're absolutely right. And it just start now, start today, right? What's the smallest step let's build that vision of you in the future, that 70-year-old, 80-year-old, whatever it is, right? Okay, whatever that is, what's the smallest action I can take today that would help move that needle just a little bit in that direction? And that might just be waking up and saying, you know what, I'm going to have an apple today because I don't eat that much fruit. Okay, let's start there, right? It might be doing that one push-up after your phone call, and don't have to do 10, do one, right? What's that little thing that's going to just set that domino effect? And it might be the longest chain of dominoes you've ever seen, but They will topple.
I think the best thing to do is you've really got to question yourself, because we all know that everything starts with the mind, right? Yeah, you need to exercise. Yeah, I know that. I just don't want to. Right. So, and that's the challenge that we have. I get it certain mornings, like this morning I had to get up at 5:20 to drive an hour so I could train. Well, that's just stupid, because I went to bed at 12. I really didn't want to, but that's irrelevant, because I've got to the point where I want that outcome, and to do that outcome I know. So my reason why is compelling enough. And I think that's the thing. People don't ask themselves a deep enough question, and therefore everything becomes very surface level. Oh, I know I should, so I will. And then they don't. And I think it's asking yourself questions like, if you carried on living your life, if you repeated this year again, so in a year's time, would you be better off or worse off? If you carried on and you did it in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, would you be better or worse off? And if you're worse off, what needs to change? Why does it need to change? What happens if you don't change it? What does your life look like? Who else is impacted by you not changing? You just have to go past the surface. You've got to ask yourself better questions. So then you come to a point which sounds so crazy, because if another race was looking at us going, you've got all the answers in front of you, why aren't you doing it? It's because we feel that we either can't, or genuinely we are lazy. There isn't a big enough reason why, albeit health should be. I get it. We've all done it. Years ago, I used to kick the ass. I literally was a walking contradiction of health. I looked great. I looked after myself, and I was drunk 4 times a week, ate loads of kebabs at night, and took loads of recreational drugs. It was a walking contradiction of health. Right. And I knew that I loved smoking back then. And I knew smoking killed, but I loved it more. It's insane what we do as humans. But you have to find your thing, your why. Otherwise, you're never going to change. And here's the thing, right? I know that you're fit. How much harder is it doing it in 40s, in your 30s? Right? How much harder is it going to be in your 50s? Okay. And so forth. So the sooner you start, the easier it will be. Now, there is no age where you're past the ability to start. You can start at any age. You just have to find your thing. Like you said, whether it's 1 press up, 10 press ups, whatever. Work at your pace. The thing is, we look at fitness as a finite thing. Oh, in 30 days, I'll be, perfect one in a lot of our community. I'm going to be healthy because then I can get into that dress. And then what? And then what? Fitness and health is infinite until you die. It is a lifestyle. And the best thing you can do is have healthy and a good fitness routine that suits your life, that done consistently, compounded over time, will impact your life more than January, going down the gym 5 times a week and then not doing it. You talked about that poker token for how many hours you get in your lifetime. Well, we've got 168 hours in a week. If you go to the gym for an hour every day, right, that's 7 hours a week. It's what you do in the other 161 hours that has more impact than those 7 hours. So it's not about smashing the gym. It's doing those 10 push-ups now and then. It's doing those squats while you brush your teeth. It's putting 80% of what's good in it for you in your body and 20%, a bit of fun, enjoyment, whatever you're into. I eat cake. I love McDonald's. I had a McDonald's at the weekend. I had cake at the weekend. And I even had 2 glasses of alcohol, which I don't really drink at the for years since my sort of moment. And but here's the thing: that drink, that McDonald's, that cake will not make you unhealthy. You have that every day. That's what makes you unhealthy. And like I said, that will compound. If you consistently make bad choices, you will consistently get the impact of those choices. So just flip it. You don't have to be a guru. You don't have to eat greens all the time, every time. Okay? But just find, if you can change your lifestyle by 10%, think of the compounding of that over the year.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about that January effect, and I saw this so many times in when I worked in gyms, and it's like, well, you mentioned that 5-year cycle. If you say, wherever you want to get to, it take 5 years. You're going to get there by going to the gym once every five times every January. Sorry, 5 times over 5 years, so once every January for 30 days at a time, or doing that one push-up. Let's just call it one push-up a day, right? One push-up a day over 5 years. Right. What's going to get you there? Now I can tell you this from anecdotal experience. You start with one push-up a day and you do it for over a year. You're not going to end up 5 years down the line still doing one push-up a day, right? It's not going to be that. So, 100%. But this is not sexy, Nick. This is the problem, right? And I feel guilty about this. I've worked on that. I'm not guilty. I shouldn't say that. I feel partly responsible because when I was working in the fitness industry, this is the dream I would sell, right? It's like, yeah, okay, you got a wedding coming up. You want to get in your wedding dress. Yeah, come on, I'll train you to get there. And yeah, sometimes we'll get to the result, but what happens afterwards, I never really found out. But we're sold this idea that, yeah, you can do it in a month. You can do it in 5-minute abs. You can do all of these things, and actually, we forget that. I love the example of brushing your teeth because, why do people brush their teeth in the morning or in the evening without needing motivation? Why do we do it? Do we really enjoy it? I mean, I don't know. Maybe people that really get a kick out of brushing their teeth. I can't say I really enjoy it. I do feel like the feeling afterwards. Why do we do it?
But I thought you were going to say about the brushing the teeth because it's a perfect analogy where you don't brush your teeth on a Sunday for an hour.
Absolutely, I was getting to that. Exactly that. Yeah. Yeah. Would that work?
I thought you were going to say. I thought you were going down there. But you don't brush your teeth for an hour. You do it twice a day for 10 minutes. And I think that's the thing. Going back to what you said that you used to sell that. Again, you only knew what you knew back then, right? And also, that was how everything was marketed to. We've been marketed to through fitness. Okay, what gear we're supposed to wear. Okay, what we're supposed to look like, look at Peloton. What an amazing campaign that they've done where everyone's got to have a Peloton. It's just a bike. There's been bikes like that for God knows how long. Okay, you can compete with people around, but that's fine. So it gamifies that experience, which is probably why it works really well. But the reality is, all those things that we've been marketed to, we now know better. So actually, we just need to do better. And by having those little micro habits scattered out throughout our days, throughout our weeks, and then we talk about that compounding of that consistency, your health, you need to look at it like, if I could get to the middle of next year and actually be 10%, 20% healthier, would that be a good thing? Of course it would. And then if I did that the following year, would that be good? The trouble is we go from here to I want to be here and I want to do it in the shortest space of time. We want it so quickly. And it's just like, and we set ourselves up to fail. And what you were just talking about, that one push-up, and this is why I love micro habits, because you are so right on this. You get someone to run on the spot like I do for 90 seconds every day. Well, guess what? Well, I'll tell you what. Someone I got to do that recently is now signed up to do a marathon. You get pulled towards doing more, not pushing against something all the time. Oh God, I should go to the gym for 40. I should do this. You're going, what? So I just do a push-up. I'll do 2. I'll do 5. And therefore it's their choice to do more, and therefore it's a lot easier. You're not going, give me 20. Oh, I don't want to do 20. I can probably only do 1. And it's just amazing, just by flipping that around and allowing people to make the choice when to grow. Start small. You decide when you want to go from 1 to 2, from 2 to 5, or whatever. You decide, but start with 1.
Yeah,
And I just,
really, it's exactly, if you say to someone do 20 and they do 1, how are they going to feel? Disappointed. I'm a failure. I can't do 20. You say to someone, hey, just do 1. It's all right. It's cool. Just do 1. Oh, I can do more. And you end up doing 3. How are you going to feel? Oh, I can do more than that. And it's a completely different vibe, right? It's a positivity there. It's, you kind of, as you said, being pulled towards that, to doing more just naturally. So that is all, that mindset is just so important, isn't it? And just framing it in that way. But it all starts with what are the rules that you're setting for yourself, right? Because these people, we mentioned January, when we're waking up in January, no one's telling us to do that. Right. So what are we setting? What are the rules we're setting ourselves? What are the rules we're playing this game by? So if I'm setting the rules for my own game, which is, let's call our life our game, I want to make it as easy as fucking possible for me to do these things. So I'm not struggling, right?
You've got to make it work for you, and not for the marketeers that are going to sell you a gym membership for January because that's when you train. It makes me laugh, right? December, you are encouraged to go out, party, eat loads of bad food, eat sweets, drink loads, be merry. And then in January, you're supposed to flagellate yourself and go on a diet and get healthy. I mean, what a contradiction of months, isn't it? Right?
Again, if aliens were watching us do that, they would think we're absolutely ludicrous.
Well, absolutely. And that's why for me, and also it goes against nature. Those dark months are when we're supposed to be hibernating, actually genuinely working on our winter body, maybe not as much as we do in December, but, eating a bit more stuff that's going to keep us warmer, going more, sleeping more, all those sorts of things, right? September for me is my new year. And actually, if you look at it in nature, spring is actually new year for nature. So why do we define nature and do it in January, the darkest, wettest, most horriblest month to do it after such a great month in December? We need to stop looking at the calendar as we have been marketed to and find out what works for us. It is so much easier to put on a pair of running shorts, running shoes, and go out for a run when the flowers are blossoming, the sky is blue, there's a little bit of warmth in that sun, and you feel inspired and lifted to do it. You do that on a damp, cold, pitch black morning in January. I'll tell you, hats off to you. That's not for me.
Yeah, you nailed it. Nick, tell us about, you mentioned earlier on about this guy's, this guy is on fire coaching. You mentioned it's about to be launched. So tell us a bit about that. What's happening? What's good? What we're going to be seeing coming up?
Cool. So what we've done is, as I said, we have This Girl is on Fire, where we look after a female community, and we've been doing that for 2 years, and essentially helping women in midlife with the challenges that they have. Now, for women, they have a lot more sort of natural challenges with the menopause, etc., and understanding how those changes and that can impact them. Whereas men, they don't have a sort of natural thing to remind them that they are midlife. They just have a moment, and that moment might be something happening at work, something happening in their life. And as things that we've touched on, what I want to do is essentially help men, 40-year-old men, with a midlife reset so they can avoid their midlife crisis. And how I do that is let them know that the feelings that they're having, whether it's trapped, heading towards burnout, lonely in relationships, drinking too much, all these things that I talked about that I've experienced. I've created a 7-step coaching program, which I deliver 1-to-1, where I just take them all through these aspects of midlife and actually get them to reconnect with themselves, their family, and their future. And it's so important. Like I said, men in 40, the biggest killer at the moment for them is themselves, because they don't know how or where to go and find help to get the questions that they have answered. And I'm, passionate about helping as many of these people as I can get through midlife and actually enjoy it. It should be a great time. Generally, you've got a bit of money on your hip. You've got a bit of an awareness about you. You can travel. You've generally got family, children, responsibilities. They don't have to be liabilities, And I think the thing is just understanding that shift from, I think the thing with midlife, you get to a point 20 years ago, you're asked to make 2 of the most important decisions of your life. What do you want to be when you grow up? And who do you want to be with? And then you look back after those 20 years and go, I made that decision when my front lobe wasn't even properly formed, right? I didn't even know what I wanted back then, but actually I thought I wanted this career because of my environment, my dad, whatever, right? I started doing this and I'm like, how the hell did I get here? And it's just understanding the types of questions that they can ask themselves to get the answers that they're looking for. It's a shame that people feel that there's no alternative. And this is something I'm really keen to get my message out on, that there is. Midlife can be fun. 50s can be fun. 60s, I'll let you know when I get there. It's my mission to inspire as many legacies as possible, and that's what I want to do with this Guys on Fire.
I love it. It's to me, it's turning into the guy you wanted to be when you were a kid, right? You wanted to grow up when you were kids. We want to. Oh, I can't wait till I grow up, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. Well, it can be that way, right? And showing people a path to that. And I just want to touch on one thing you said, you're right. We do go through that patch of our life at 20 to wherever it is, and we maybe turn around and say, "This is what have I been doing? This is not me." But I think what's helped me is just recognizing, hey, that was just a stepping stone for discovery, right? Who says that when the decisions you make at that age, as you said, that's it? It's gospel. It's written in stone, and you can't deviate from it, right? Mm-hmm. It's a stepping stone. It just see it as I spent 15 years working in the city, and I hated it. Right? There's a lot of things I didn't like about it, and things that led me to emotions and feelings and things that happened to me afterwards. But if I look back now, would I take it back? I wouldn't. Right? I wouldn't, because the way I look at that experience is that it taught me a lot, right? It taught me a lot. It taught me what I really don't like doing, and it taught me what I really love to do. And that's what shone the light to guide me where I'm going now. And if I hadn't had that experience, who knows? Who knows where I'd be, if I'd be even sitting here talking to you, Nick.
Well, I think what's important is a midlife reset is a reflection. And it's not about, oh, God, I've wasted 10 years. No, you haven't. Because, whatever you've done in those 10 years, good and bad, it's got you to this point. Okay? It's like if you carried on doing it for another 10 years, arguably then you could say that you wasted another 10 years doing something that you didn't want to do. But when you get to a point when you realize that you're not enjoying it, from that point onwards, when you don't do anything about it, which men are really, really good at doing, that part's a waste.
Yeah.
What you did to get there isn't. Because like you say, I think the thing is, yes, you wouldn't be where you were, but what men tend to do is work hard, like you being in the city. Again, listening to your story, I know what your thought process were. I know what you were trying to achieve. And what most men do is they will do that at whatever cost. And they will turn around and go, look, everyone, I'm here, I'm successful. And then see the devastation behind them, or actually that no one's behind them because they haven't managed to keep anyone around them because they're so focused, so driven, which is totally fine if that's what you want. But they get to a point and they realize actually it wasn't what they wanted. And this is what I'm finding with people I talk to, where actually the more successful you are, the harder you are finding midlife. You know, I spoke to a guy 6 months ago. I won't tell you where. He works in London, but he's a shoe shiner, right? He polishes people's shoes. He's done it for nearly 30 years, okay? And the people's shoes he polishes are millionaires and billionaires, right? And he's one of the happiest men I've ever met. And that's the thing. We think we need all these materialistic things. Look at me, I'm successful. I'm a man. I'm the guy. You know, that's exactly what I was like. And I wasn't happy at all. You know, I have the least amount of possessions I've ever had, and I'm the wealthiest I've ever been. You know, I am fulfilled. I am happy. I am grateful. I am loved. And I think the thing is, it's just understanding, okay, you've got to a point, but you don't have to carry on. And the biggest concern is that most men get to a point financially where they go, actually, I do need to carry on because I've taken on a massive mortgage. The kids are in private school. I've got all these things. If I don't, then the world will implode. And the issue with that is they've never looked past that point to find out actually if they did change it, what it would look like. They go, I'll do it for the children. Do you? You know, there's a wonderful quote. Your children don't want your presents. They want your presence. You know, so they don't want your gifts. They want your presence.
Yeah, love it. Yeah.
And the thing is, we think we're doing it. And when you speak to most of those people, you go, what was your dad like? Oh, he worked hard. He wasn't home a lot. He did that. And how did that make you feel? Well, it made me feel a bit shit. I don't have a great relationship with my dad. All right. Okay. And what are you doing for your children now? I'm repeating that pattern. And I just want to show men in their midlife that there's another way.
I think it's such important work, Nick. I think we need more and more advocates, and I know this movement is growing, but I think it's important to see it from all different factions, right? Different, different people, different types, different nationalities, different, demographics talking about this stuff, because I think it, as you said, it affects us all. And I think the work that you're doing with Andrea and This Girl Is on Fire, and of course now taking it into the men's world, I think it's really inspiring. Your Human Flag projects has inspired me to think of something to do for my 50th, or by the time I'm 50, I got 7 years, nearly 6 years left. So I think I'll find something fun to do. I think just keep doing it, keep being you, and I think just bring that positivity into the world. Where can people find out more about what you're up to, what you're doing, see your journey to Human Flag and all that good stuff?
Well, listen, thank you. If you follow me on Instagram, it's at This Guy Is on Fire. And also my website, which should be up by the end of the week. I don't know when this podcast is going out, but it will be at thisguyisonfire.com. To connect with me, reach out, ask me some questions, whatever you want to do. I love just talking to people. It's not always about, I'm not the guy that's always selling. I just love, if there's something, this is what we talk about, myself and Andrea. Our job is to learn every day so we can pay it forward. I know so many little things. I'm not an expert. I'm an expert in me. I'm an expert in my life. I'm an expert in everything that's impacted me. I come into contact with loads of experts. And if they tell me a little nugget and I think that's brilliant, I will share it. So, anytime, just message me, DM me, and I will gladly tell me what's bothering you, and I'll see if I can share a little nugget with you to help you get through it.
You said it with the word connect, and you mentioned it earlier about you helping men reconnect, and I think that's it, really, isn't it? Connection. It's just all about that. It really is. Thank you so much.
Definitely. Listen, thank you for having me. I've loved it, and I look forward to seeing you very, very soon.